One, for Democrats, it's AOC. What grade would you give the Trump administration? What's going on with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth? And is there a disintegration, at least online, on the right? Two, Supreme Court arguments over whether or not you should be able to read Pride Puppy to 3-year-olds. Three, the NFL draft. For many, it's going to come down to this. Will there be inflation? Will somebody trade up for Shadur Sanders? It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Always on demand by subscribing at Apple or on Spotify. Every day when I wake up, fellas, two-a-day stand, young establishment James, I feel like a quick scroll through X reveals the complete disintegration of anything that would hold the middle. I don't ever mean the middle as centrist. I don't mean the middle as moderate. And I don't even mean the middle as consensus. But I mean the middle as the centrifugal force that holds together any consensus, any movement, any party, any ideology. Every day I wake up and I see increasing divide. I also don't want to use the word divide the way it has become cliched. Mm-hmm. Oh, we're so divided in America. Why can't we all just get along? Why can't we all just believe the same thing? But every day I wake up, there is some new intra-party fight. Yes, of course, it's Chuck Schumer and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but increasingly it is Jordan Peterson versus the online right. Increasingly, it is Douglas Murray versus Dave Smith. Increasingly, it seems like that if we looked into our crystal ball and looked into the future, a debate about AOC versus J.D. Vance is less relevant than the complete fracturization of any like-mindedness in America. It's as though we are splintering into literally glass-breaking 1,000 pieces. That can lead to a debate about whether or not online is real life. But as we wake up today, a quick scroll, once again, will make you wonder, in a short period of time, post-Donald Trump, what's left? What's left not to bring us together, but to bring us even into two competing ideologies for America? I want to get that and much, much more today. I also want to revisit some of the arguments at the Supreme Court of the United States. I always find oral arguments and hearing from Neil Gorsuch or Samuel Alito absolutely fascinating. And that'll be coming up in just a moment here on the Will Cain Show. But let's get to it with story number one. The Ruthless Variety Program is hosted by four gentlemen, three of which join us today, comfortably Smug, Michael Duncan, and John Ashbrook. What's up, fellas?
Great to be back.
It's always great to have you. I know you heard what I just said, and I hate to start out on such existentially serious issues, but it is kind of where I wake up today, fellas. On one hand, you've got this new Siena poll that shows Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is outpolling Chuck Schumer in popularity. Nate Silver, and whatever we have to say about the accuracy of Nate Silver, has made his projection some years out. He has said it will be AOC. AOC's approval rating, favorability rating, is higher than the Senate Minority Leader, Chuck Schumer. That could lead us, fellas, from Ruthless, into a conversation about the way that the left has been hammered. Democrats have been losing, and their current solution to that is to triple down. But I also think that it can't be untethered from this thing that seems to be burgeoning on the right. And I just think that there is something that is disintegrating. I really do. And I think, honestly, the only thing that's holding it together right now is Donald Trump. And once he exits stage right, that we're going to be experiencing something on the right very, very similar to what they're experiencing on the left. What do you think, Smug?
So I kind of feel like you see the symptoms, but I disagree on the diagnosis here, where there are tons of on the right there's tons of different voices with a myriad of different opinions on you name the subject, and you'll hear all these different voices and perspectives on it. And I think that's a terrific thing. And it seems new and unprecedented, I think, partially because we're in a cycle now where traditional gatekeepers to allowing people to have their voices heard are increasingly being removed. We talk about the new media. This was the podcast election. There's no longer a reliance on, ABC, NBC, or CBS deciding whether you're allowed to have a voice. Whether, Simon & Schuster's not the only place that can decide whether you can publish a book. And the ultimate marketplace of ideas right now is X. Elon has completely liberated basically any sort of block between you and having your voice heard. And as a result of that, you're now having anyone can express their opinion on anything. It's a wonderful thing. And I think this debate on everything now.
I think this existed on the right forever. I mean, go back to the Tea Party movement, all the divisiveness then in the Republican Party and the conservative base and the grassroots. I think the left is just finally getting a little taste of it. And to be honest, I mean, I'm glad. And I imagine it's going to continue because this is a party that basically lied about a dementia patient in the White House for 4 years, put in Kamala Harris. She fails to win in November. And they basically changed nothing when it comes to the party apparatus or the leadership there. So I think the AOC thing is, it's sort of like their left-wing Tea Party primal scream, and I think it's going to continue.
Yeah, and Democrats have been a top-down system for decades, starting with the Clintons and then through the Obamas, and they controlled the media like we were talking about. So everybody sort of got in line, and now that the Clintons are out of the picture and Obama is relatively out of the picture, there are new voices cropping up, and nobody really likes what they're hearing from Democrats, but there's just this insistence from them that, like, no, we need to stick with woke. We need to go harder into the paint with woke. And on the Republican side, we have had the multiple voices for decades, and then President Trump comes along and he has strong leadership. And I do think, Will, you're right that when President Trump exits the scene, Republicans could go back to a lot of the same infighting that you saw in the early 2010s, the days of the Tea Party.
And I think that's healthy and natural for any political party. We saw that after Bush exited with the Tea Party movement and everything like that. I mean, like, that's how parties grow and survive. And we're going to talk about this a little bit tomorrow on Ruthless, about this doubling down that you're seeing from the left right now on all the woke stuff. We saw after November that a lot of the party establishment and some of their media luminaries were trying to course correct the party, right? Maybe we need to talk less about illegal immigrants and how great it is to let everybody in this country unvetted. Maybe we need to de-emphasize, transgender issues and things like that, or I don't know, men playing in women's sports. And that lasted like through the new year. Yeah. And then basically every, left-wing lunatic in their party, he was like, no, we need to double down on that. We can't shy away from our values. And so what you're seeing right now is the left signaling that they refuse to abandon those positions that cost them the election in November.
I had several different topics that I wanted to talk about today with the Ruthless Variety program, which includes, by the way, their defense, their rallying cry of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, not only Garcia, but also Mahmoud Khalil. Today, 4 Democratic congressmen are headed to Louisiana to champion the cause of Mahmoud Khalil. I also want to talk about Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and kind of what grade we would give the Trump administration 100 days in. The point of me laying that out is I don't think we're going to neatly separate these into separate conversations because I think they're all beginning to meld together. And I think that's fine and that's good. We will ultimately come back to your point, Smug, which I don't know, while we agree on a diagnosis, if we actually also disagree on a prognosis, meaning I'm not sure this is negative. And I hear all 3 of you talk about it's a good thing. But let's do this for a moment. Let's set aside the right. Let's at least for the moment hone in on the left. So, Duncan, you laid it out. Okay, the cohesion of the left ended into a cul-de-sac where they uniformly defended a senile president. And that seems to be coming to an end. Evidenced, I think, pretty awesomely here, even by, I think, noted leftist and comedian Rainn Wilson pushing back on Stephanie Ruhle on MSNBC. Watch.
We have to cover Democrats trying to figure out what their lane is and how they're going to get back on their feet. And we have to simply cover what this White House is doing. And I think if we do that, right, there's that saying, you know, trust is gained in raindrops and it's lost in buckets. And it's not yes, you're not incorrect that the media has lost trust.
This is where I would push back. When I see this kind of insight and passion being directed at the current administration and the lack of this kind of insight and passion being directed at the previous administration, where, again, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about left-leaning news media organizations were kind of like, la, 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 everything's fine. Look, the environment's, look, the economy's great, la, 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 immigration's not that much of a problem. And really being Cleopatra, queen of denial. Thank you. Boom.
All right, it's notable. It's notable because Rainn Wilson is not some sort of moderate. I think throughout his history and when he's spoken out on issues, not some sort of moderate pop culture figure. He has been definitely a man of the left. But I think it's just furthering the point we're making about whatever is happening. It's this existential moment for the left, and it's maybe even more typified by what's happening with AOC. We all brought her up. Like, here's her going back and forth with Nancy Pelosi. As she rises in popularity, Pelosi pushes back, right? She says that AOC and whatever's going on have their public whatever in their Twitter world, but they don't have any following. They're 4 people, and that's how many votes they got, talking about the squad. But AOC fired back. The public whatever is called public sentiment. And wielding the power to shift is how we actually achieve meaningful change in this country. So, Ashbrook, you pointed out the left has always been cohesive and monolithic and top-down driven. This is the revolution right here inside of the left. It is AOC disrupting that monolith.
Right. Yeah. And the truth is, Democrats need a leader. They need somebody to look to for the future. They need somebody who they can see as like their 2028 candidate. They need it as bad as the Cowboys need a wide receiver with that first round pick. And what really has to happen,
nice.
What really has to happen for Democrats, if they want to succeed, they need to find their way back to the middle. Their problem is that everybody, like Duncan was saying earlier, everybody who immediately after the election was like, okay, we got to get normal again. We have to be able to talk to people in a normal way. They're wokes who are funded by the left-wing interests from around the world, the Soroses and the Hansborg Visas of the world. There is so much money on the left that it's really hard for any remaining normies in their party to get a share of voice. And so right now, you look at AOC, she's going around to these rallies with Bernie and, they're getting crowds. So it seems like she is really starting to sort of take the mantle for them. I'm not sure that's a good thing for their party in terms of winning a general election.
I think it's a great thing for our party.
That's the question.
The fact that she just raised close to $10 million in a single quarter, I think should have been a wake-up call for Schumer.
Yeah.
But do you guys think, I'll go to you first on this, Duncan, it's tempting for the right to laugh at AOC because it is a triple down on what seems to be what lost them the last election. Maybe not the last election because we can never separate that from the fallibility, the senility, the incompetence of Joe Biden. But the issues that people like AOC champion are the proverbial ones we talk about that are the 20 side of the 80-20 proposition. Like that's what they seem to be the champions of, the 20, right? And even Gavin Newsom at some point going, maybe I should try to find some issues that are more 60-40 even, But I do think it's tempting, Duncan, to dismiss her because and maybe that's a mistake because she is charismatic. Like, let's be real for a minute. She is charismatic. Do you think we're underestimating AOC?
Yeah, I don't dismiss it at all. Look, I don't think Donald Trump became president of the United States because he had the best white paper or plan, right? He's a showman, right, and he's charismatic. And you know what? AOC is too. And she may not have all the connections of Nancy Pelosi or, the long relationships with the party bosses. But what she can do is show up with Bernie Sanders in Colorado and rally 50,000 people. And, so you can't overlook that, right? Politics is always an inside-outside game. And you need legislators who can actually get policy done, but you need public support on the outside. And so I think, yeah, I mean, from a messaging perspective, she's one of their best voices. So I don't overlook it at all.
It's a tough one to struggle with because, again, it's back to those 80-20 propositions, and people like AOC are the flag bearers of the 20% proposition. And that brings me to Kilmer Abrego Garcia and Mahmoud Khalil. So what they think right now, I know because I've had this debate on the Will Cain Show on numerous occasions, they think they are flying the flag, and they think it will be popular, of due process. They think they can sell that they're standing up for a constitutional right, that they are the party of rule of law. Politically and publicly, to me, this comes down to one of two things. I actually don't think the public's going to buy this whole due process argument because both Khalil and Abrego Garcia have received some measure of due process. And that could maybe set some hair on fire, but due process is not a Cracker Jack box thing, one size fits all. Non-citizens don't get the same level of due process as a citizen. It either comes down to, Smug, they're champions of some incredibly unsympathetic figures, right? Politically, that's how that plays. You are for gang members and terrorist sympathizers over American citizens. Or, to me, what they're really trying to do is stay quadrupling down on their long-time, decades-old addiction, which is Donald Trump's an authoritarian and he's coming for you. If he can take down Kilmer Abrego Garcia, he can take down you. Get ready to be deported from America.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a mix of all of those things. I think that's typically like their primary motive is if Trump is for one thing, then we must oppose that. And I think that's the initial motivating factor for why they've jumped onto this insane situation in the first place. The optics, as you just described, are completely terrible for them. Why would you be on the side of someone who literally has tattooed that they're a gang member all over themselves? How are you going to champion that? Someone who's, domestic abuser, someone who's now you see a case of human trafficking. It's like, this is not, the hill you want to die on by any measure. And what further complicates this is the reason it feels especially kind of awkward for them is they haven't exactly been champions of the Constitution and the rule of law. When we've seen for years, this is the party that championed go out and riot, burn cities down if you don't get your way, student loan forgiveness, Supreme Court be damned. So it's a very awkward position. Voters can feel that of like, wait, this feels kind of like an opposite position of where you typically are. This doesn't make any sort of sense. But, hypocrisy's never stood in the way of Democrats before.
Yeah. And on the subject of the rule of law, Democrats in New Mexico, I don't know if you saw this, Will, first reported by Fox this morning. There was a judge in New Mexico that was housing a TDA member in his home. This guy was just like kicked off the bench because he's too close to violent illegals personally and in his home. And so their problem on the Dem side and their ideology about open borders is pervasive throughout their party. I don't think there's any way they get that out of there.
Yeah, I did see that story. The exact details is that his wife took in a guy who was doing manual labor, let him lived in the pool house or in the back house, and it turns out he was a member of Tren de Aragua. Something. I think those are the details, something like that. But the long and short of it is TDA member in the house of a New Mexico judge. Yeah,
not exactly good judgment.
And the pictures of the guy with guns in the house, like it's a terrible look for them as they're trying to lecture us about the rule of law and how they know better than everybody else.
Well, but I think what you find with the left, and I think this is a signal for them, in their party and to the grassroots, is like they never fight on the most defensible ground. Remember the gay hairdresser that was supposedly deported incorrectly and everything, and people are like, "Oh, I think we goofed on this one." Like that was gone in a second. Like if I was the Democrats, that would be the one I'd be talking about every single day. But no, they're talking about the guy with the MS-13 skull and the marijuana leaf on his fingers. And the reason why, and it's the same thing with Mahmoud Khalil, is like they actually pick the most outrageous, indefensible, and defend that because it sends a signal to their left-wing base that we will go to the mat, whole hog on the whole thing in the most indefensible, because that covers everything else underneath it. And that's the signal that they want to send to the base.
What will be the issue? This is not it. Okay. You don't believe it's about the rule of law and due process. I don't believe it's about the rule of law and due process. We've all talked about what we think it's really about. And sometimes it's just not complicated. Like you said, I think it was Smug or Ashbrook that said, it just, for a decade now, it's been Trump is on A, that means I have to be on B. And it's really that simple often for them. And because he's the villain, so I'm the hero. If he's over here, I'm over there. But what will be the issue? Politics swings. It does. You know, there's overreach. Parties ascend, parties descend. It's how it works. What is like, but it's hard to, we always talk about who the person will be. Oh, yeah, AOC. What will be the issue? Like, will they, seriously, will they pick an issue that is not an 80-20 proposition?
I think they're going to wake up one day. Will, I think they're going to wake up one day.
By the way, the tariff thing, the tariff thing is one they could. They could go after that in the market and the economy, but they choose not to go there.
I think for their electoral proposition here, if you're just talking pure politics and then looking at the way that Hispanic Americans are trending towards the Republican Party, I think the Democrats are going to wake up one day and be this border security party again. And it's like, that may sound crazy, but it ain't. Like, go back and look at the clips of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi talking about immigration 20 years ago. I mean, they can turn on a dime once they think it actually impacts their electoral chances. I think that's the one where they will flip in an instant.
It's a far cry from championing Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
But as Smug says, the hypocrisy's never stopped them. So,
right. All right, let's flip it now. I said I would set it aside. Let's talk about the right. Let's start with this. And, you know, I don't want to push you guys into someplace you don't want to go. I just scrolled, speaking of doom scrolling across this, and I saw somebody giving grades to the Trump cabinet. You know, who gets an A, who gets a C, who gets a D and an F. And it was going cabinet by cabinet member. And I'm just curious, like, here we are. We're approaching 100 days into this administration. How do you feel? Is there any cabinet member that's really let you down, that you have big concerns about? Is there anybody that's really impressed you? How do you feel about the Trump administration?
Well, I have to say I'm pretty thrilled. I'm if there's a specific cabinet member I want to give a grade to, I'd say Burgum. I give a B because he doesn't hang out enough. He's only been on our show once, but they've been doing a phenomenal job. I mean, you look at the results you have to show in 100 days, how much progress has been made in this country. We went from, it's inarguable, the border was wide open. I mean, it was easier to cross the border and get into this country than Disneyland. Yeah. It's just open gate. And we've gone from that to, you see statistic after statistic of where it's less than 1% of 1% of the traffic is now being seen at the border. And it's been 100 days. That isn't because President Trump has been able to deploy all the, security at the border that he wants, has been able to build up the wall the way he wants. It's because folks know there's a new sheriff in town. The border's no longer open. One of the most significant issues for voters has been solved in the first 100 days. That's unbelievable. I can't think of an administration who had a campaign promise that was essentially done in under 100 days. That's unheard of. It's incredible.
I think I would give the first 70 days an A+. A+. I think I'd give the last 30 more of a C+. And then I'd average it out to like a B+. Yeah, I think on the tariff issue in particular, the crossed wires in the messaging was not a good look between Bessett and Lutnick and Navarro. And it made it unclear what the ultimate end game or strategy was for a lot of these tariffs. And it was a shock to the system in the markets. I think the surrogates in the administration didn't quite know which path to go down. And then it's been kind of herky-jerky with the start and the stop and the change. And I don't think that was a good strategy. But other than that, I've been pretty pleased.
Ashbrook?
Well, I think if you look at like a guy like Sean Duffy, for example, he started on his first day with an absolute tragedy in transportation with that wreck between the airliner and the helicopter. He jumped on that right out of the gate and started working towards reforms. That guy deserves an A. And I also, here's the other thing. I know that there's a lot of like churn out there about the Department of Defense and Pete Hegseth and all these stories at Politico.com about people are upset with Hegseth. But I think if you look at the tail of the tape at DOD, the first military action under the President Trump administration has gone off with precision. They're attacking these Houthi terrorists, and the Houthi terrorists are being killed. If you look at what's happening in the military in terms of recruitment, every single arm of the military, recruitment is up, morale is up. And so I know there's a lot of like conversation and chatter about Hegseth, but there's only one person who matters when it comes to Hegseth, and that's the President of the United States. And he seems very satisfied with what Hegseth is doing. And I've seen no evidence out of this White House that they are anything other than happy with the way the guy is doing the job. And you can see why. The evidence points to they should be.
Yeah, and I mean, with the Hegseth thing, it's like I don't want us to get amnesia about what happened with the first Trump administration, where it was like journos were just cooking up absolute lies. They were printing anything possible. The Russian hoax, for God's sakes, we know was completely fake, so that all these journals could get book deals and TV hits, and they all made fortunes. Like the amount of books that were sold on that Russiagate nonsense, and that those journals are still working. You don't hear a peep from any of those folks about, well, for the past 4 years, the commander-in-chief of the military was essentially Weekend at Bernie's. Right. We had a defense secretary go missing.
Right.
Yeah. Missing. Right. And they're trying to attack right now. The only images you see of Pete Hegseth, and I love seeing these in my feed, is like he'll be at a German military base doing morning workout with the troops. You saw like that giant troops, like that soldier was like ear to ear smile doing the morning run with Hegseth. The morale of the military is sky high. And the only people who feel bad about Hegseth as Secretary of Defense are the terrorists that he's just mopping up.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I do appreciate and like the tail of the tape, and I think that you're right. You can't underestimate the value of morale and preparedness. That's the point of the Department of War or the Department of Defense. But I want to dig on this just a little bit more because it takes us back to our beginning and end conversation about the right. The story is, as you mentioned in Politico, several other sources, that the way they characterize it is dysfunction or chaos inside DOD. Why? 3 members of Pete Hegseth's inner circle have been fired. They are men of the right. They all come from, by all accounts, more of the, and I don't want to use any of these words loosely or certainly as a derogatory term, but just do my best to be descriptive. Not isolationist would probably be fair, America first, dovish on war, anti-neocon wing of the right's thought world. They are accused of leaking information by the DOD, and that is a crime. If that's the case, that is a crime, and they will be investigated, and I'm sure they will be prosecuted as such. Those 3 guys are out there talking. One of them appeared on Tucker Carlson's show, and then everyone's going to write it up. It has been written up about whatever's going on inside the DOD. Now, here's the thing. I don't know. I'm being upfront with the audience. I don't know. I don't know if this is an ideological divide, kind of where we started this conversation about whatever's going on the right. I don't know if this is a clash of worldviews between people that see the world through one lens versus, I don't know, maybe a Michael Waltz, more neocon view of the world. I don't know if there's a turf war. I don't know if it's personality conflicts. I don't know why what is going on. But it is true. It is going on. 3 have been fired from the DOD. And that seems to be the biggest story when it comes to Hegseth at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think if you're a staffer at DOD, and I don't care if you're interventionist, non-interventionist, isolationist, dovish, neocon, what have you, the ultimate thing that you should be judged on, whether you have that job tomorrow, is whether you're fulfilling the agenda of Donald Trump as president, his vision for America's foreign policy. You know, I feel like we saw this a lot in the first Trump administration, where there were some of these staffers who got sideways on what the president wanted to accomplish and undermined him. And that is obviously wrong. None of those labels actually matter when you're a staffer. It's like collecting Pokemon cards. Like, your job there is to do what Donald Trump wants, right? And so we saw a lot of infighting in the last administration. Then we saw, you know, people like that Miles Taylor from DHS doing the anonymous book and all this sort of stuff. If you're undermining the president's vision for America's foreign policy, you need a different job.
Yeah, what Duncan is saying is so important, because there are so many bureaucrats who are not aligned with what this president wants to do, and they act out in their own ways. We learned this during the first term, in a big way, and now they're from the top at the White House fighting back against these career bureaucrats who think that their job is not to serve the president, is not to serve the people who voted for Donald Trump, which is their job. And then if you include with those civilian employees, if you include people who are put in leadership positions by the new administration, that's a problem. Mm-hmm. Your job is to you work for the people who elected this man. Right. 77 million people said, we want Trump. We're putting our trust in him and his vision. And that's who you work for. You don't work for yourself. You don't work for the agency. You work for the people who voted. And I think that that is so important for everybody to remember on a daily basis. Mm-hmm.
It's a really good point made by both of you. You know, you may have a strong ideological point of view and you may want to push the administration in one direction, but that doesn't give you the right to leak if that is so true, or to cause waves if it's somehow not aligned with the direction, as you pointed out, Duncan. You have one job: to fulfill the vision of Donald Trump. Okay, then this takes us full circle. So, Smug, I like everything you said, man. I really do. I like the idea of free and flowing debate. I like the idea of a clash of ideas on the right. And I agree that has largely been present. You know, I think there are varying degrees. I mean, we could always look back at the Tea Party, for sure. There's always been the presence of a Ron Paul, which maybe you could say there's been a Bernie Sanders on the left, but he's proven to be much more of an institutional figure than, say, a Ron Paul. All that being said, and maybe it's a moment. But right now, it just feels like, and it's a very online thing, and this conversation with Hegseth it's the one thing that makes me wonder, is it relegated to online? That there is a clash of worldviews on the right. A lot of it has to do with Israel. To be blunt and pointed and accurate, a lot of it does have to do with Israel. But it's not just about that, you know, and I think it's been illustrated by Douglas Murray versus Dave Smith. And then all of a sudden today, it's like Jordan Peterson is in the crosshairs because he specifically went on Joe Rogan and warned about kind of what they're calling now the woke right. But he's kind of more saying it's not about ideas. He thinks that there's just people in every walk of life and in every thought process who are narcissistic and they take advantage of movements. And he thinks that he says you're seeing that on the right now. He thinks you have players in this game who aren't really about the ideas or about a better world, but about personal gain. I don't know. I'm just telling you, I just feel a little bit of a different degree, Smug. I feel a little bit extra venom, and I feel a little bit of a brewing thing happening here that is just different than the Tea Party saying, hey, Senator Orrin Hatch, we don't think you're conservative enough.
Again, I think it's more acute because now you can actually see the sausage getting made. You know, 2010, when you had the Tea Party movement springing up, the only way to see that in action was you'd go to a town hall. Mm-hmm. You'd have to show up to an event. You'd have to see it happen there. You'd have to go to a Tea Party rally. That's how you'd see it. Now you can see it 24/7 from your living room in real time. The debate happen on your phone. That's a degree of being involved in a conversation that people have never had before. We've come close, but even then, you had, you know, especially for the last couple of years before Elon took ownership, Twitter became just an echo chamber for the left, which they've now turned blue sky into for themselves. But it's never before been able to see so many people debate every possible issue 24/7 in real time, unfettered. And I think that leads to just even more discourse on the subject. And then what you have is when you have a number of individuals who can start leading their own groups of discourse on an issue, who might have an interesting or a novel concept or idea, it's easier for them to get attention for that. But it also can make an individual look like they have an outsized influence. You know, I like to say that if you really want to see the efficacy of a movement, go into Walmart, ask 10 people, can you get over 5 of them haven't heard about it?
Right. Right. And the answer on what we're talking about is you wouldn't get 1 out of 10 to hear about most of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is this happens with any successful movement, Will. I think you've identified it correctly, is that like Donald Trump succeeded against all the odds and became president of the United States again. And so in that movement, more people come into the fold, right? Libertarians, isolationists, Ron Paul people, like you said, who want to be a part of this as well. I mean, that's sort of like you're a victim of your own success in some ways. If you're a Republican and you're like, well, who are these people who showed up? They jumped to the front of the parade and declared that they started it, right? Like you'll have some of that. That's just the nature of political movements. And I mean, I like the diverse opinions, especially when it comes to things like foreign policy, because the Republican Party's gotten a lot of stuff wrong. I mean, the Iraq War didn't go so well. Yeah. Right. And I think what Donald Trump has articulated correctly in his America First vision of foreign policy is we're going to go kill bad guys. We're not going to waste blood and treasure in foreign adventurism and put boots on the ground where it's unnecessary. We're going to defend our allies, but we will not subordinate America's foreign policy to anyone.
What I like best, and maybe this will be an argument just to make everybody's lose their mind for a third term of Donald Trump. What I like best about Trump is that, you know who's one of those 9 in the Walmart, Smug, that has no idea about any of the stuff you're talking about? Donald Trump. He has no idea about any of this that we're talking about. And there's just a pragmatism to him, intuitive pragmatism, that doesn't get caught up in all of this ideological warfare. You know, like you said, I'm going to kill the bad guys. I'm not getting bogged down in a war. Why? Not because I got bought into some big argument about the existential nature of the United States on the world stage and whether or not we're good or we're bad and whether or not we've been a net positive or net negative. No, because that just sounds like, a bad idea for America. That's just not that's smart for us. I don't know. There's a level of common sense pragmatism to Trump that might be his most special characteristic that I don't even know if we can ever recapture. I love JD, by the way. I love JD. He's much more ideological than Trump. Much more, right? I think he would agree with that. There's something about Trump's common sense pragmatism that might be the thing that sets him apart from every politician.
I want to say an interesting observation if we're going to contrast the two between Trump and JD, and both of them have a very interesting ability to reflect people's and the public's opinion, and it comes from different places. So a lot of people think it's almost magical the way that Donald Trump can 80-20 these issues, as it's magic, as if he's some sort of magical figure. But this is someone who, through the 80s, to come up through the media environment in New York City, right? Working with like the New York Post and the tabloid papers and get his name in the headlines day after day and have The Apprentice, a hit TV show for decades, to be the most famous living person on earth right now, possibly ever, is incredible. I remember after that assassination attempt, you saw kids in Africa reenacting it, holding a piece of wood. That is, that is incredible power. It's because he has that ability through his experience with the media and understanding how people feel about issues and seeing how an issue is going to play, right? I think JD has a very different approach of how he connects to individuals. This is someone who literally came from absolutely nothing. The promise this country is predicated upon is, equal opportunity. We'll give you the same start. In America, you can start with nothing, less than nothing, and nothing can stand in your way. If you really want to put in the work, if you've got it in you, if you want to knock it out, you could do anything. And you have an example. J.D. Vance had nothing, worse than nothing, horrific childhood conditions. Then he gets a law degree from Yale. Now he's the vice president of the United States. That is, the American dream. That is the story and promise of America right there. And that connects with Americans. Every single person who saw Hillbilly Elegy, the film, read his book, connected with him, because they know that person, because all of us have experienced setbacks, challenges in life. And when you meet him, and for someone who is a senator and now vice president, to speak with individuals and give attention to individuals on equal footing, it's incredible.
Yeah, but it will be different, Will, like you mentioned, like after Trump. If it is JD's party, he's going to have to go out and earn it in his own way. And Holmes, who's not here, obviously, but what he always says is nobody got elected president surfing somebody else's movement. Every person who's been elected did their own thing because they are their own person. And that will have to be reconstituted on the right after Trump, no doubt.
Awesome conversation. I appreciate you guys always being with me. Michael Duncan, Comfortably Smug, and John Ashbrook. The gratuitous Cowboys wide receiver draft pick is not going. I just want to be clear about something.
I stand with you on NIL.
You will not use that. That's what I was going to say. Donald Trump, Smug, operates on this magical level of common sense. I operate on a magical level of understanding people's motivations. And Ashbrook, that was a very poor attempt to try to recapture some testosterone after the awful nil conversation from last time. I saw it in the moment. I let it slide. I thought I'd revisit it. But I hope you guys have learned your lesson. Smug said, I've been out of sports too long.
I love that so much, Will. As a person who knows ball, I'm with you. I stand with you. It's NIL.
But that's just how you attack. You always go for someone's strength and make it their weakness. You've been out of sports for way too long, Will.
All right. Holmes isn't here to defend himself. Well, I love all four of you guys, so everybody gets a pass, but it is not nil and will never be nil. It's NIL. Okay, the boys from the Ruthless Variety Program. Make sure you subscribe at Apple, Spotify, and check the guys out. It's a great show. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
All right, there they go. The boys from Ruthless. I mean it. Go check it out. I'll tell you, every time I've been on or interact with the guys, I'm just going to tell you this. You know who I get a text from? Some high-level player, governor of X state, ex-big politician D.C. Loved you on the program. Insiders have a good time on the Ruthless Variety Program. Let's have a good time with the Supreme Court of the United States. I mean it. I actually love it. I love hearing Supreme Court arguments. You've got to hear some of the wisest people in the United States when they take on the idea of a puppy roaming through a pride festival. Next on the Will Cain Show. If the future of the Democratic Party is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she just narrowly seems to be beating out of center stage Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, on the Fox News Facebook page. Hit subscribe at Apple or Spotify. Even you haters and losers, we love you here on the Will Cain Show. Fellas, I told you this in my debate the other day with Congressman Maxwell Frost. Big ratings. Got the charts. People like the debate.
Big ratings on the internet.
They like that. What do you mean?
Just I see it everywhere.
Yeah.
I can't look at X or Facebook or anything without seeing you debating the guy.
Will Cain gets owned in
his
own mistake, that stuff?
No, not always.
Oh.
There was some news organizations that said you won that debate, you showed him what's up type deal. So
Oh, really?
yeah.
Do you know he was born in 1997?
Weren't you?
What year were you born, James?
99. I got
2 years older than you.
I know.
You too can be elected to Congress.
You got some work
you
to do.
You too can come on to Fox News and destroy a host and embarrass him on his own program.
Let's give it a shot right now, James. Why don't you try to destroy our host right now with the debate?
Yes.
Speaking of embarrassment and speaking of Maxwell Frost being on the far left and AOC, stiff competition. Here's Jasmine Crockett on Jimmy Kimmel talking about the future of Dems.
One of the things that we've got to do is focus on how we communicate, not necessarily exactly what we say. And so I know that there are those that want us to stick to perfection. But honestly, some of the most watched moments that I've had have been when they were anything but perfect, right? Like what I said, I would say if somebody asked if I had a chance to talk to Elon. So, I think that if we focus on really being very cognizant of our audience and speaking to them in an authentic way, which looks different depending on who you are, I don't think that, honestly, policy is what we need to be fighting about. Because guess what? Can't nobody tell you what Donald Trump's policies were. at all. I don't even think that it's policy. I think that people are voting on vibes. I think that people are voting for like who they feel like is being honest with them, even if they don't like what they're saying. So I think that we just need to really tap into like being okay with just being real people and showing people that we are real people.
Okay, that's simultaneously stupid and smart.
Yeah.
That's simultaneously right and wrong. It is.
Vibes.
It's a little bit like the conversation we just had with Ruthless. Don't ever underestimate the value of charisma and personality. And key to that is authenticity. I've always said authenticity is a necessary but not sufficient component to anything in life, including politics. Meaning, you got to be real. But if what people really see they don't like, it ain't going to work. So you got to be real and really appealing. But the mistake that she makes is that Donald Trump isn't about policy. That's like an absurdity of ignorance. Like, first of all, go back a decade. And I think this has to be hammered home again and again and again. Like whenever you're talking about Stephen A. Smith or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You can't look at Donald Trump and simply go charisma and vibes. Although it's part of the picture. It is part of the picture. Immigration specifically was the policy issue that drove him to the White House in 2016. This time, it's immigration again, but also the economy. And for 40 years, he's been talking about the policy of tariffs and global trade. So you cannot pretend that his policies did not play a role in this. So you can't be an empty charismatic vessel, Jasmine. You can't. You can't be an empty charismatic vessel, AOC. So also, like, the code switching is so obvious. Like, it was even in that clip. Like, that's not the Jasmine Crockett you see in other places. And look, you can talk about the validity or the fact that code switching exists, but I'm going to tell you one thing that code switching does. It reeks of inauthenticity. One way or the other. Do you know what I mean? Like, one of them is inauthentic. That's the whole point. That's what it admittedly is by self-definition. Now, okay, let me be more charitable. We all speak more loosely in some situations than we do in others. Something I want to improve upon, I'm going to be real, is my use of bad words, cussing. Like, you guys know, I do that too much. And I don't mean this like trying to be holier than thou. I want to quit nicotine. I don't need to be using those words so much. They don't reflect well. And I don't do it when I'm on TV. So is that a form of a code switch that I don't do that? I don't know. So
everyone does that. I'm
trying to be somewhat charitable. What's that?
Everyone does that. I mean, it's just a thing. It's a social thing.
Yeah. The Supreme Court of the United States yesterday heard arguments on parents opting out, wanting to opt their children out of public school lessons. It included reading, I think what many people would really, common sense wise, go inappropriate for children. One of them included a book called Pride Puppy, something like that.
Yep.
And it's about a puppy that gets lost at a pride parade. And I just thought you should hear some of the oral arguments yesterday. I always find oral arguments fascinating because you never hear from these justices. You just don't hear their voices. You don't hear their thought processes. You don't hear their wisdom, their judgment. And they're the highest judges in the land. So also the arguments made. So let's listen first to Justice Neil Gorsuch questioning the attorney for the school district in reading these books to children.
Pride Puppy was the book that was used for the pre-kindergarten curriculum. That's no longer in the curriculum.
That's the one where they are supposed to look for the leather and things and bondage, things like that.
It's not bondage. It's a woman in a leather.
Sex worker, right? No,
that's not correct. No.
I read it.
It's a drag queen.
Drag queen and drag
correct.
queen.
The leather that they're pointing to is a woman in a leather jacket. And one of the words is drag queen in the search.
And they're supposed to look for those.
It is an option at the end of the book, correct?
Yeah, okay. And you've included these in the English language curriculum rather than the human sexuality curriculum to influence students. Is that fair? That's what the district court found. Do you agree
I
with
think
that?
to the extent the district court found that it was to influence them towards civility, the natural consequence of being exposed.
Whatever, but to influence them.
In the manner that I just mentioned, yes.
Whatever.
It is. So the argument is exposure for civility's sake instead of indoctrination. And the argument is, why are you indoctrinating these kids into these things? Like, just carry that to its logical conclusion. By the way, don't sell me on a pride parade as simply a lady in a leather jacket. Like, would you read Penthouse letters? Would you read Penthouse letters to under the banner of civility and exposure and tolerance? Like, what are we doing? And a parent shouldn't be able to go, no. They go on in that clip to go, we're talking about, first they said 4th or 5th grade, then they brought up it's 3-year-olds as well, that this is being read to them. It's not even available in the library. It's being read to them in class. You know, I saw this clip this morning of an old colleague of mine at ESPN having this very heady conversation about trans athletes in sports and the numbers of people that do it. And it's a minuscule number. And this, it's just like at some point, you're so wrapped up in being so smart that you lose absolute common sense. You just do, you know? And this is all growing. It's all metastasizing. Like, oh, it's so small. But it always starts small, by the way. It always does. And then it always grows because the value that you've used to justify it is a value with no governor. Tolerance is a value, but you're applying it indiscriminately to where the point of there are things you should not tolerate that are bad judgment. It's sort of the defining characteristic of humanity. Judgment. Eat this, don't eat that. Read this, don't read that. Do this, don't do this. Like, it is what sort of, among tools and other aspects, differentiates us. My dog eats things and throws up. We try to have enough discerning judgment not to do the same, okay? And we can apply that in a whole host of walks of life. All right, now here is Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson also during this oral arguments yesterday.
This is a preliminary injunction. I appreciate that. When you seek a preliminary injunction, you actually have to have a factual record that is the basis for the court to make a determination in your favor that some conduct that you're complaining about needs to be enjoined. And what's confusing to me and hard, really hard in this situation is that we have a lot of sincerely held beliefs and concerns and children and principles, and I see all of those things, and so really want to be careful about making the pronouncement that relates to this. I don't understand how we can do it on this record because we can't know. We don't at this moment, based on the record you've provided, know that these books aren't just sitting on the shelves. And you've said that if that's the case, that's not going to be enough.
Well, but I guess she's arguing that it's not being read to children. It's not indoctrination. It's just availability. It's just exposure, which I would also argue it doesn't need to be available. Do you have Penthouse letters? Do you have copies of Hustler in the school library? All right. Let's leave the Supreme Court there. We have much more coming to the Supreme Court on a whole host of issues. On May 15th, birthright citizenship will be argued before the Supreme Court of the United States. Take a quick break and talk about whether or not there's going to be availability for everyone that wants to trade down on one single premise. I think, honestly, one name. You won't be able to trade down unless this name is one you hear on Thursday. That's next on The Will Cain Show. Mount Rushmore of sports. 4 figures, okay, throughout history. Let's state the obvious and see if we can go with the second best options for the Mount Rushmore sports. It's the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page. Hit subscribe at Apple or on Spotify. The NFL draft is Thursday night, first round Thursday night, second and third round Friday night. It's honestly one of my favorite things of the year. I only say honestly because you guys know that. I'm just trying to think what even compares. If my team is in the playoffs, maybe a Dallas Cowboy regular season game. Like, what am I more jacked up about? Honestly, the draft. Like, random football game in October versus the draft. It's the draft for me. What about you guys? Like, random Patriots or Packers game, regular season, versus the draft. What would you be more excited about?
Well, generally for the Patriots, the draft doesn't mean much, but I guess that's not true anymore.
I'm going.
Yeah, you know, get off your high horse because you're about 3 or 4 years into this fall. I mean, you can't ride
It's
this.
over.
We're the cream of the crop of the NFL. Yeah, it's over.
I don't like the false hope of the draft. It gives you this false sense of hope. Unless you're taking someone that is an absolute game changer, I don't really care as much. I mean, I'm a Green Bay Packers fan. I would take a random game in October over the draft right now.
I saw somebody say, I heard the stat the other day, I think it was Ron Wolf, former GM of the Green Bay Packers, say, your goal, honestly, in the draft is 333. It's like being a Hall of Fame batter. If you hit on 33% of your draft picks, you win. You win. So it's not false. You just have to start realizing that not all of them, in fact, only about 33% of them are going to be a hit. I don't know. It's super fun. Here's the thing, what I've come to learn. The first 10 picks seem pretty solid, roughly, the first 10 picks. After that, like picks 11 through 40 have equal weight, equal measure. We've learned this from Todd McShay and others who've been here on the Will Cain Show. Meaning everyone after the first 10 picks is going to be somewhat interested in trading down. The problem with trading down is you have to have a partner who wants to trade up. And it doesn't look like many teams will want to trade up, except for one thing. And this one thing happens all the time, every year. Quarterback inflation.
Ooh.
A quarterback who is not really worthy of a top 10 pick, a top 15 pick, but is the guy for whatever reason that year, is sitting there, and some team decides we got to have him because we don't have something else. And that name this year will be Shedeur Sanders, son of Deion Sanders, quarterback, Colorado.
He's dropping, though.
It's possible. It's possible he drops into the 20s. It's possible the Pittsburgh Steelers say, take him in the 20s. But it's also possible that somebody like the Giants or the Steelers or the Saints with their second try to jump back in. If they pass on him in the top 10 picks, which the Giants most certainly will, sitting at number 3. I think the Saints are sitting at number 9. Are they number 9 or number... Yeah, number 9.
9.
If they don't take Shedeur Sanders there, then it's who will jump up. Will quarterback inflation take place? It almost always does. Will it be Shedeur Sanders? Will there be a team looking to come up? And if you're a team like the Cowboys at 12 and you want to drop back 3, 5, 8 spots, can you find that team that wants to go up for Shedeur Sanders? Go ahead, Two-A-Days.
And I think after that, the only other quarterback people are really looking at now, the Giants, interestingly, like him, is Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss, which is fascinating to me. So if they trade up with the Rams, some people are saying the Giants might go with Jackson Dart, which is last second
I see
thing.
big quarterback inflation for Jackson Dart.
Yeah.
I see a lot of buzz around Jackson Dart.
Big time.
And I suspect he will go in the first round somewhere. Latest, like one of the first picks of the second round, but I think somebody's probably going to have to trade up into the first round to grab Jackson Dart. All right. We'll be dialing in on that as we go throughout the week. I already am dialed in.
Of course you are.
Who do you want?
Cowboys-wise.
I don't have a player I'm in love with. At number 12, I guess I would like, I play around on my simulator. And what I do on my simulator most often is I trade down.
That's so nerdy. That's so
because
nerdy.
It's more fun.
That is the nerd thing to do.
It's so fun. It's so fun to trade down. It's so fun to play on the simulator. That's probably not going to happen. So I've started to try to be realistic and just make my pick at 12, and it's almost always at this point either Arizona wide receiver Tetaroa McMillan or Texas wide receiver Matthew Golden. It's one of those two, most likely.
So Ashbrook was right.
And there's always the scenario of Shedeur Sanders going in the top 10. Maybe the Saints take him, and somebody gets pushed down that you didn't expect. That happened with Micah Parsons. The Cowboys weren't looking for a player like that, and then positionally, they weren't looking. But then you're like, hey, look who's available. And if that happens, I want to take the guy. You take difference makers. That's what you do. I actually don't think it's an easy spot for the Patriots at 4. Like there's 3 clear top players. Well,
we
2.
We won they win the last game of the season. Come on. The amount of draft picks you could get.
2 top players, but Cam Ward will go number 1, and then Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter will go 2 and 3 in some order. After that, I don't know.
It kind of
offensive line.
It's going to be line. They have no line right now, and even if he's not the best player available, they need that so badly, and then you're not going to have a chance to get a lineman that good in any other way. So it kind of seems like they're going with that LSU
Well, in that case
guy.
for you, it's probably going to be Will Campbell from LSU. All right, so you guys put this out to me the other day. Mount Rushmore of sports, 4 spots, 4 main sports, I would say, right? We're going to go NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, and NHL. I think it's pretty easy to establish your Mount Rushmore of sports. I think it probably goes pretty easily Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, Wayne Gretzky, and Babe Ruth. That would be my suspicion. Any problems with that Mount Rushmore?
Baseball.
Yeah.
I think everyone you talk to that played Major League Baseball in the last 30 years probably will say Barry Bonds is the best hitter to ever play the game. I know steroids. I know all that. I don't think Mount Rushmore.
I thought about this when I started thinking about, okay, Will, what if you can't pick the easy ones? What if you take those 4 out? Then what?
Joe Montana.
And this is what made me think about it. I don't think you can just pick the second best. Like, there's something more to Mount Rushmore. It's like relevance, fame, influence, not just best player. And it made me think about it like, okay, if Brady's not the guy, is it Montana? And Montana, to me, is the second best player. Patrick Mahomes is right there between the two. And I think time robs you a little bit of Montana's greatness and his fame. But, like, do you guys feel like Montana's relevance has really declined? Like, people knowing and giving him his respect and his place in the NFL history?
Since Mahomes.
It's really declined. I'm not saying right or wrong. It just has.
Since Mahomes, yeah, for sure.
And the fact that there was a time where
it's probably due to Patrick Mahomes.
Yep.
My point is, I don't think the legend of Barry Bonds even approaches the legend of Babe Ruth.
I don't know.
As a face of that sport.
I don't know. I think if you take away the steroids, the controversy, I just hear baseball players talk about him like he is this unicorn in baseball when it comes to it. I don't know. Just based on that fact and guys who really know the game, I would have a hard time betting against that.
They will all tell you unanimously that he was the best hitter they've ever seen.
Ever.
And it's just not
so
close.
If we said you can't take the 4 I mentioned, then you would definitely be picking Bonds as your baseball representative.
I would put Bonds. I mean, as a Yankee fan, I'd put Derek Jeter first, but Barry Bonds, yeah.
Hey, do you know who I grew up with as like the icon of baseball?
Nolan Ryan.
It wasn't my age, but like, you know how it's handed down. It's Mickey Mantle. Like, as it's handed down generationally, like, Mickey Mantle, I would probably put above Barry Bonds. It doesn't mean Mickey Mantle's a better player than Bonds, but just like here's how the kids would say it, right? The aura of Mickey Mantle.
Just ripping darts.
Is huge.
In the ripping darts.
He did it on one leg too. He tore his ACL in his rookie year and he limped around the rest of his career because they didn't have proper surgery back then.
You get what I mean by aura, right? Like,
Presence.
Who are we talking about? Is that sport? For example, I think the second best basketball player is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar after Michael Jordan. I think he was dominant, incredible. But I don't know that puts him on the Mount Rushmore, like if you don't put Michael Jordan.
LeBron, I mean,
I don't think it's probably Bill Russell. It probably has to be LeBron
or
at
Kobe?
Some point here.
Kobe?
No, I think LeBron over Kobe. That doesn't mean who's better, who's worse, but influence, lasting impact.
Big time.
Name recognition. I mean, I actually think Steph Curry is one of the most influential players in NBA history.
Longevity, too.
That doesn't put him on
we
Mount
changed
Rushmore.
the game.
I was watching the Lakers last night. LeBron's still putting it down, man.
If Tatum gets another Finals MVP this year, when does he enter that?
Oh, boy.
I'm kidding.
Right. And then this is kind of another one. if not Gretzky, do we have to give due to the guy who just broke Gretzky's record?
I was just going to say.
It has to be Ovechkin.
Yes, sir.
But he's not close on the point side,
But the
right?
problem is
no one will.
the comfortably smug test of going to Walmart. Go into Walmart and ask 10 people who's Alexei Ovechkin, and you're not getting that many, man.
I bet people know Sidney Crosby over him, Ovechkin.
I bet you they do too.
He has more
I don't
points.
think that makes Crosby the next guy after Gretzky.
No.
I mean, I don't know. Who is it?
It's Bobby Orr.
Bobby Orr. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the Hulls, Brett or Bobby Hull, like one of those.
Can we add?
It probably is Orr.
I have to add something to this Mount Rushmore. If we're adding one more sport, Tiger Woods is the best at his sport in any sport, I think. He had the best run out of any athlete in any sport, hands down, in my opinion.
Aura. Total aura.
But he never caught Nicholas.
Still, it just his impossible run and how he was playing during that time is absolutely incredible. And I know it's recency bias compared to Nicholas, but still.
Golf is harder now, too, than it was during Nicholas's time.
Yeah.
It's just the Lindy effect of how.
Okay.
Tiger's got to go.
Okay, so is it then Tiger Woods, LeBron James, Patrick Mahomes, and Mickey Mantle?
Oh, I still have a hard time.
I feel like the baseball one we have to debate.
Yeah, baseball is a whole different animal.
I like Peyton over Mahomes.
Ooh, interesting. I kind of do too. I kind of do
because Peyton had to run through
put
Brady
Peyton over Montana.
Peyton gets way more rings if Brady doesn't exist.
Huh.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. You can drop into the comments section. Let us know. Become a member of the militia. Facebook, YouTube, X, Instagram. If we can't use Ruth, Brady, Jordan, and Gretzky, then who is it on the Mount Rushmore of sports? That's going to do it for us today here on the Will Cain Show. We'll see you again tomorrow. Same time, same place. Next time.